"You don't want me," she said, locked room. Next day, Cat Headmistress finds me on her daughter's chest. The first night at the academy was too quiet. Evan Hale noticed it the moment the station lights dimmed to their artificial evening cycle. The silence was not empty. It felt held, like the pause before someone spoke and then decided not to. The Interspecies Academy floated above a blue gas giant, its wide glass corridors reflecting distant stars. Evan had trained for months to work here. He was a human exchange specialist, sent to observe, learn, and quietly prove that humans could belong among older, more powerful species. The academy was led by the Felisari, a feline alien race known for discipline, mental strength, and sharp social order. Their headmistress, Maelrix, was respected across 3 systems. Evan had met her only once that day. She was tall, fur silvered with age, eyes sharp and calm. She welcomed him with formality, not warmth. "Follow the rules," she said. "Observe only what is given. Some doors are not meant to open." Evan nodded, as humans often did. He had learned that nodding was safer than arguing in alien places. His assigned quarters were small but comfortable, clean lines, neutral colors, a window that looked into the starfield. Evan unpacked slowly, placing a photo of Earth's oceans near the desk. He had always found comfort in water, even when surrounded by metal and vacuum. He was about to sleep when he heard it. A voice, soft, female, not loud enough to trigger alarms, not quiet enough to be imagination. "You don't want me." Evan froze. The voice came again, clearer this time, not from inside his room but from the corridor outside, specifically from the far end where the academy's old research wing connected to the residential sector. That wing was supposed to be sealed after an accident years ago. Everyone knew that. Evan stood up slowly. His heart beat faster, but his training pushed panic aside. He opened the door just enough to look out. The corridor lights were low, casting long shadows. No one was there. But the voice came again, now sounding tired. "You should go back." Evan stepped into the hall. The voice led him, not with sound but with a sense, a pull behind his eyes, gentle but firm. He walked toward the sealed wing, passing doors marked with Felisari symbols he could not read. The air felt colder there, not physically but emotionally, like a place forgotten. At the end of the corridor stood a door unlike the others, thick alloy, no visible handle, no access panel. Red warning lines glowed faintly around its frame. The locked room. Evan had seen its location on the station map, but the file held no description, just a blank space where details should have been. "You don't want me," the voice said again, now clearly coming from behind the door. Evan stopped a meter away. His reflection stared back at him from the polished metal surface. Human, small, soft compared to the Felisari guards he had passed earlier. "I don't even know you," he said quietly. There was a pause, then a small sound like a breath. "That is why." Evan felt a pressure behind his eyes, not pain, something like sadness that was not his own. He leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "Are you trapped?" he asked. "Yes. Can I help?" "No." The answer was immediate, firm, almost frightened. Evan frowned. Humans were used to warnings. They lived with them. Radiation signs, storm alerts, failing engines. A warning did not always mean stop. Sometimes it meant be careful. "Why are you here?" he asked. Another pause, longer this time. "Because I failed." The words carried weight. Evan closed his eyes. He had heard those words before, spoken by soldiers, scientists, people who carried too much responsibility alone. "I was told some doors are not meant to open," Evan said. A soft sound came from the room, not laughter, something close to it. "They were right." Evan straightened. "Then why talk to me?" "Because you are human." That surprised him. "You know what I am. I feel it." The pressure in his head increased slightly, then faded. Evan realized then that this was not sound at all. It was thought, shaped gently into language his mind could understand. "Why does that matter?" he asked. "Because humans endure." Evan swallowed. No alien had ever described humanity that way. Weak, adaptable, persistent, yes. Enduring, that was new. If you endure, the voice continued, you will stay, and you should not. Evan looked at the warning lights. They pulsed slowly like a sleeping heart. What happens if I stay? He asked. The answer came quietly. You get hurt. Evan exhaled slowly. That happens anyway. Silence filled the corridor again. This time it felt different, listening. Please, the voice said at last, go back, forget this place. Evan nodded, though she could not see him. He stepped back. The pull eased immediately, like a hand letting go. As he turned to leave, the voice spoke one last time. If you come again, it will not be an accident. Evan returned to his room with more questions than fear. He lay awake for a long time, staring at the stars. His mind replayed the voice, the warning, the strange sadness. By morning, he told himself it was stress. First night nerves. Human imagination filling empty space. But when he checked the station logs out of curiosity, he found something that made his stomach tighten. There was no record of sound, movement, or neural activity in the sealed wing. According to the Academy, the locked room was empty, and it had been for years. Evan closed the terminal slowly. Somewhere beyond alloy and warning lights, something that was not supposed to exist had spoken to him, and it had told him the truth. Humans endure, even when they should walk away. The morning started like any other at the Academy, but the calm was only a fragile layer over tension. Evan Hale sat quietly at the small breakfast table in the human wing, trying to process the strange events of the previous night. He knew the voice he had heard was not a hallucination. Something in the station's oldest corridors had reached out to him, and that realization both fascinated and unsettled him. The Academy's corridors were alive now with the usual rush of students and instructors. Felisari pupils moved gracefully, their movements precise, almost floating, tails brushing lightly against their robes. Humans were a minority in the Academy, observers and assistants in a place dominated by species far older and stronger than themselves. Evan felt the difference sharply, yet he had a quiet confidence that humans survived situations other species could not. That thought gave him comfort, but also a warning. He was walking on ground that few had ever touched and lived to tell the tale. Breakfast ended quickly. The clinking of utensils and low chatter gave Evan a temporary sense of normalcy, but it did not last. A loud alarm sounded from the infirmary wing. Red lights flashed. The entire academy seemed to shiver under the sudden stress. Evan ran toward the infirmary, following the throngs of students and staff. Panic is contagious in any species, and Felisari were no exception. By the time he arrived, the scene shocked him. He stopped short in the doorway. There, on the floor, lay a young Felisari woman. Her fur was silver like her mother's, though softer, and her ears twitched even in unconsciousness. The headmistress, Malric, stood nearby, but it was not her usual composure that caught Evan's attention. It was his own body that seemed drawn forward, almost without choice. He found himself kneeling beside the young woman, instinctively placing his hands over her chest. His mind went blank for a moment, but the warmth under his palms was real. She was breathing barely, but enough to know she was alive. The headmistress's gaze met his, sharp and demanding, yet also laced with something Evan could not name, trust, perhaps, or desperation. "Step back," she commanded, her voice low but strong. Only she can, before she could finish, Evan's body reacted. Humans could not normally survive the psychic surges that occasionally erupted from Felisari with strong empathic abilities. Yet here he was, standing in the middle of a crisis that should have overwhelmed him. Somehow instinct and curiosity had combined, and he absorbed the energy that radiated from the young woman. His muscles tensed, his mind screamed in alien waves of sensation, but he endured. Humans had a strange resilience, one that other species often dismissed. The infirmary doors slammed shut as emergency medical units arrived. Machines whirred to life, scanning the young woman. The head medical officer, a tall Felisari with deep amber eyes, studied Evan suspiciously. "You should not be here," the officer said. "No human can survive that." Evan shook his head weakly. "I didn't choose to be elsewhere." The headmistress's eyes softened for a brief moment. She studied him carefully. "You were the only one who could stand in that room with her," she said, "and survive." Evan's mind went back to the locked room of the previous night. The voice, the pull, the warning, they were connected. Somehow the Academy's daughter, the one lying unconscious, was linked to that strange energy, that place humans were never supposed to reach. His survival was not chance. It was proof that humans could endure what other species could not. Yet the knowledge brought no comfort, only new questions. Security footage from the corridor outside the locked wing was missing. The logs showed no movement of any kind. No record of Evan's presence. Nothing. The Academy had cameras everywhere. And yet, for the corridor leading to the sealed room, there was only blank data. It was as if he had walked into a place that refused to exist. The headmistress studied the blank footage. Her tail flicked nervously. "This should not be possible," she said. "Nothing survives that corridor." Evan pressed a hand to his forehead. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I was drawn there." Her eyes narrowed. "Humans are unpredictable." Evan chuckled quietly despite the fear in the room. "We endure, that's all." By mid-afternoon, the young woman began to stir. Her eyes opened slowly, pupils dilating as she took in the room. Her gaze landed on Evan first. Recognition, surprise, and relief flashed across her face. She tried to sit up but faltered. Evan helped her, supporting her small frame as she regained balance. "You came," she said softly. Her voice held the faint echo of something ancient, like a memory beyond her years. "You were not supposed to." "I could not leave," Evan replied, "even if I wanted to." The headmistress stood at a distance, observing. She had always known humans were different, but now she saw it clearly. They did not simply react. They endured, absorbed, and when necessary, survived circumstances that would destroy others. Her daughter had tapped into a psychic power far beyond what even the Academy could control. Most species would have died. Humans, apparently, could not. The young woman's hands trembled. "I locked myself away," she admitted, her voice weak. "I thought I could control it alone." Evan shook his head. "You would not have controlled it. I helped because I could, because humans, we endure." Her eyes widened slightly and she smiled faintly. "Endure, that is a human thing," he nodded. "Yes, we survive, even when it's dangerous, even when we shouldn't." By evening, the chaos had subsided. Staff members whispered among themselves. Students avoided the infirmary doors, and the academy began to return to its normal rhythm. Yet something had changed. The headmistress no longer looked at Evan as just an observer. He was a human who had survived what none of her people could. That fact could not be ignored. In the quiet moments after dinner, Evan walked alone to the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions. He thought about the voice from the locked room, about the young woman, about the strange pull that had guided him. Humans endured. That simple truth, which other species dismissed, had just saved a life. A soft sound came behind him. He turned to see the young woman standing at the doorway. Her hair shimmered faintly under the deck lights. She looked at him with curiosity and caution. "You are different," she said quietly. "You should not have survived that." "I told you," he replied. "Humans endure." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then perhaps I was wrong to lock myself away." Evan did not answer. Words were not enough. He only stood there, letting the silence between them acknowledge what had happened. The academy was full of rules, protocols, and warnings. But human endurance had crossed all of them. That night Evan slept little. The image of the locked room, the voice, the unconscious young woman, and the headmistress's sharp gaze circled in his mind. Something bigger was happening here, something no species had fully understood. Humans were not the strongest, the fastest, or the oldest species in the galaxy. Yet in a moment that should have destroyed him, he had survived. And that survival carried weight. Morning came, bright and sharp. The academy resumed normal activities, though whispers followed Evan wherever he went. Students glanced at him with curiosity, some admiration. Humans were rare here, and surviving a psychic surge that would have killed any other species made him remarkable. Yet Evan felt only the quiet knowledge that he had done what was necessary. That was all humans ever did. They acted, endured, and lived to see the next day. The headmistress approached him briefly before class. Her silver fur glowed in the morning light, and her amber eyes held a mix of respect and caution. "Be careful," she said softly. "The academy watches closely. You have done something unexpected. That is both good and dangerous." Evan inclined his head. "I will be careful." But humans endure. With that, she turned and left, leaving him with the unspoken acknowledgement that humans were capable of more than her species had ever believed. By the time he reached his lecture hall, Evan realized that the Academy's perception of humans had shifted. Not because of politics or skill, but because one human had survived what no other could. That truth would ripple through the Academy for days, months, perhaps years. And Evan, quiet observer though he was, had become proof of it. In the back of his mind, he remembered the voice from the locked room. "You don't want me." Perhaps she had been warning him of the danger. Perhaps she had been testing him. Either way, humans endured. And for now, that was enough to change everything. Evan Hale had begun to understand the Academy, but understanding was not comfort. The halls were filled with whispers about what had happened, about how a human had survived a psychic surge that should have killed any other species. Yet, for Evan, the true mystery had only just begun. He could feel it like a weight in his chest and mind, always present, waiting for him to notice. The young Felisari woman named Lysera remained in the infirmary under constant observation. Her parents had requested discretion, but word always traveled fast in the academy. Students avoided her room, staff whispered in hidden corners, and even some of the older Felisari instructors studied Evan with an unusual intensity. They wanted answers he did not yet have. Answers, he realized, he might not be able to give. He spent most mornings in the observation deck or library, reading the station logs, Felisari texts, and historical records. Humans had always been considered fragile in comparison to other species. They could not breathe toxic atmospheres, withstand high G-forces, or resist psychic waves. Yet here he was, proof that survival was more than physical strength. It was endurance, patience, and, in some situations, a stubborn willingness to face what others could not. The Felisari had dismissed humans for millennia. Now, they had no choice but to reconsider. Lysera began to show signs of recovery by the third day. Her breathing stabilized, and she could sit up without help. Evan was allowed to visit her under strict supervision, and he noticed something strange about her. Even when awake, she seemed to exist partially in another space. Her eyes often drifted, focusing on nothing visible, and occasionally she would flinch as if someone else were touching her mind. The psychic residue from the surge lingered, a constant hum that only she could feel. Evan understood that she carried a power far beyond the Academy's usual control, a power that made her dangerous even to herself. "Why did it happen?" he asked one morning, his voice careful, soft. They sat side by side on the edge of her bed. She did not answer immediately, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the wall. "I tried to control it," she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I could lock it inside me, keep it from harming anyone else, but it was too strong. I wasn't strong enough." "You didn't fail because of weakness," Evan said. "You failed because you were protecting everyone. Humans endure too, but we can't control everything. Sometimes survival means letting others help." Lysera finally looked at him. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, a mixture of relief and disbelief. "You were the only one who could enter the surge," she admitted. "Everyone else would have been destroyed." "I endured because humans endure," Evan said simply. "That is all." The room fell silent. Not uncomfortable silence, but one heavy with unspoken understanding. Lysera's head tilted slightly, studying him. "Humans, they endure differently," she said. "Felisari survive by strength and control. Humans survive by persistence." Evan nodded. That was close enough. Words could not fully describe the human ability to endure hardship, danger, and mental strain without collapsing. He had seen it in war zones, on distant colonies, and now here, under conditions no one else could survive. It was not courage exactly, nor was it luck. It was something deeper, a combination of curiosity, stubbornness, and the quiet knowledge that surviving was always worth trying. By the fifth day, the headmistress summoned Evan privately. Her silver fur gleamed under the office lights, and her amber eyes were sharper than ever. "You have survived what no other species could," she said. "That alone is extraordinary, but there is more at work here. Lysera's abilities are connected to something ancient. Something older than this academy." Evan listened carefully. He had sensed the traces of something old, something that had shaped the academy long before humans arrived. "Ancient?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "The locked room you heard last night, it is a containment chamber. Not for experiments, but for psychic energy. Felisari built it centuries ago to protect anyone who might be overwhelmed by power. No Felisari has survived entering it without preparation. Humans, perhaps you are different." "I entered it because I was drawn," Evan admitted. "I felt like I had to." "And that," the headmistress said, "is exactly why you survived. Humans do not think in terms of control alone. You endure because you act. You do not calculate limits. You meet danger head-on and survive when others cannot." Evan leaned back in the chair, trying to process the compliment. No other species would describe human persistence as strength. They might call it recklessness, stubbornness, or foolishness. Yet here it was being praised for exactly what it was. The headmistress rose and walked to the window overlooking the stars. "Lysera is powerful beyond measure," she said. "Her abilities could destroy entire sections of the station if left unchecked. You have stabilized her, but only temporarily. That is why I need your help. You understand endurance in ways our species cannot. You can guide her." Evan frowned. "Guide her? How?" "You survived where others would fail," she said. "Your presence alone stabilizes her psychic energy. We need you to be with her while she learns to control herself." Not for us, but for her. It was a strange request. Humans were not usually used as stabilizers for alien psychic phenomena. Yet Evan recognized the logic. He had endured the surge, absorbed it, and survived. That endurance was now the tool needed to train Lysera. It was not skill, not raw power. It was human resilience, quiet and persistent. "I'll do it," he said, "but I need to understand more about what she feels, about the surge." The headmistress handed him a small, glowing device. "This records psychic resonance. It does not interpret it fully. You will feel the echoes of her energy, the push and pull of her abilities. Use it carefully. Your endurance will be tested, but humans, you endure differently. That is what will save her." Over the next several days, Evan worked with Lysera in controlled exercises. At first, even small bursts of her psychic energy made his head spin. He could feel waves of thought, emotion, and raw power pressing against him, trying to overwhelm his mind. But he endured. He held her steady, guided her through exercises, and slowly her own control began to improve. Other students watched with awe. Humans were rare here, and to see one withstand energy that would break the strongest Felisari was a revelation. Evan became more than an observer. He became proof of what humanity could achieve. Survival through endurance, persistence, and an unwillingness to walk away from danger. One evening, as the artificial sun dipped into the horizon of the gas giant below, Lysera spoke quietly. "I think I understand now," she said. "Humans survive differently, yes, but more than that, humans endure because they care, because they choose to face what must be faced, even when it is dangerous. You did not have to enter the locked room. You did not have to protect me, yet you did." Evan smiled faintly. "Sometimes enduring means helping others, that is all." Her eyes glimmered with newfound clarity. "I will learn to control it," she said, "and I will do it with your help. Perhaps we can prevent a future disaster." Evan nodded. That was the goal. Survival was not enough. Humans endured, yes, but endurance alone did not guarantee success. Control, understanding, and teamwork were also necessary. With that combination, even the most dangerous powers could be managed. By the 10th day, Lysera could emit small bursts of energy without destabilizing herself or the environment. Her confidence grew, and Evan's endurance had begun to feel almost natural, as though it were a rhythm between them. The Academy began to see humans in a new light. Not just fragile observers, but participants in a larger, more complex galaxy. Species that dismissed humans as weak now watched carefully, learning that endurance came in many forms, and humans possessed a rare and valuable one. The headmistress watched the progress silently. Malrix understood that a human had done what no other species could, survived and guided a Felisari through psychic turmoil. She considered it a turning point. Perhaps humans would not only endure, they might also shape the future in ways the Academy had never anticipated. Late one night, Evan returned to the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions, and he reflected on the events of the past 2 weeks. Humans had always survived, sometimes quietly, sometimes against impossible odds. Here, in a place of ancient psychic power and alien discipline, that endurance had made a difference. Humans could endure the impossible. Humans could protect others when no one else could. Humans could, in their quiet way, change the rules. A soft flicker of energy appeared in the corner of the observation deck. Lysera had followed him. She smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and curiosity in her eyes. "You survived, guided me, and endured," she said. "That is not something we often see, even among our kind." Evan nodded. "It is what humans do." For a moment they stood in silence, staring at the stars together. The Academy hummed quietly around them, alive with secrets, energy, and history. And in that moment, Evan understood something important. Survival was not about strength or speed. It was about endurance, compassion, and the courage to face what others could not. It was human, and it was enough. The next challenge, he knew, would be even greater. Lysera's abilities were still growing, her powers unpredictable. The locked room, the strange voice, and the psychic surges were all reminders that the Academy still held dangers humans had barely begun to comprehend. Yet, Evan felt ready. Humans endured. And as long as he could endure, he could help others survive too. The stars twinkled like distant promises. Beyond metal walls and psychic storms, the galaxy waited. And for the first time, Evan felt that humans had a place in it, not merely to observe, but to endure, protect, and shape what was to come. That was the truth he had learned, the gift he could give, and the lesson no one else could teach. The Academy never truly slept, but the night often brought an eerie stillness that pressed on the mind. Evan Hale walked quietly through the halls, his footsteps soft on the polished floors. The events of the past days weighed heavily on him, yet he felt a growing sense of purpose. Humans endured, yes, but here, at the Interspecies Academy, endurance had taken on a new dimension. It was not just about surviving. It was about guiding, protecting, and facing dangers that no one else could. Lysera's abilities had grown steadily, but with growth came unpredictability. Even small bursts of her psychic energy caused minor tremors in the hallways and made the air shimmer with tension. The headmistress had approved controlled exercises, but there were limits, and Evan was the only one trusted to remain by her side during them. Every time he entered her training room, he felt the weight of the Academy's history pressing down. Centuries of Felisari discipline, combined with psychic potential too great for any one species to handle alone. One evening, as the artificial sun dimmed into the gas giant's shadow, Lysera stood at the center of the training room. The walls were lined with energy-dampening panels, and sensors blinked faintly, recording every fluctuation. Evan positioned himself across from her, steady and calm as he had learned to be. His presence was not merely comfort, it was an anchor, a living counterbalance to the raw, volatile power radiating from her. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lysera nodded. "I think so." The first burst was small, almost imperceptible. A wave of psychic energy radiated outward, rippling through the room like wind over water. Evan felt it press against his mind, an intense pressure that would have overwhelmed any other being. But he endured, steadying himself with quiet breathing, letting the energy flow through without resisting or panicking. This was human endurance in action, patience, calm, and the ability to stand firm when all else demanded flight. "Good," he said. "Now try again, a little stronger." Lysera concentrated, summoning more energy. This time the room vibrated, sensors flashing warnings. The walls groaned under the strain, and Evan's hands went slightly numb from the psychic feedback. His mind pulsed with the rhythm of her power, almost like two hearts beating in different frequencies but finding a way to align. He held steady, guiding her without words until the energy dissipated harmlessly. Lysera opened her eyes, breathing heavily. "I didn't lose control," she said, a mix of relief and pride in her voice. "You endured with it," Evan replied. "That is what makes the difference. Humans endure differently. We survive by letting things flow through us, not by shutting them out." The lesson was simple in words but profound in practice. Felisari often relied on sheer control, building barriers of discipline to contain energy they could not handle. Humans, by contrast, endured by absorbing, adapting, and persisting. It was not faster, not stronger, not cleaner, but it worked. Over the following days, the exercises became more challenging. Lysera experimented with long-range bursts, sending psychic ripples through the corridors. Evan had to follow, anchoring her energy, ensuring no one else was affected. Staff members observed cautiously, some taking notes, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The idea that a human could withstand such raw psychic force was almost unimaginable to the Felisari, yet here it was, proven. One night, as Evan guided her through a particularly difficult exercise, the energy surged unexpectedly. Lysera's concentration faltered, and the psychic force expanded beyond the room's dampening panels. Sensors screamed, warning lights flashing red. Evan felt the pressure spike, a tidal wave of psychic intensity threatening to push him back, to break him. He held his ground. Human endurance was tested not in strength but in persistence. He did not flinch, did not retreat, did not panic. He absorbed the surge, letting it flow through, steadying Lysera until she regained control. When the energy subsided, the room was quiet. The walls had trembled, the sensors were silent, and the faint smell of ozone lingered in the air. Lysera sank to her knees, exhausted but unharmed. Evan stood beside her, breathing steadily, feeling the residual hum of her energy fade. "You did it," he said. "You endured. That is what matters." Lysera looked up at him, eyes wide with amazement. You didn't even move. I thought everyone would be overwhelmed, but you held it." Evan smiled faintly. "Humans endure, that is all." The headmistress appeared at the doorway then, silent and observant. Her eyes glimmered in the dim light. "You have exceeded my expectations," she said. "Both of you. Lysera is stable, and you have shown what humans can do. It is remarkable." Evan inclined his head. "It's not skill, not magic, just endurance." Her amber gaze held his. "Endurance alone can shape the future, Evan Hale. You may not understand it fully, but what you have done here will be remembered." Over the next week, the academy began to adjust. The other Felisari students were cautious, but curious. Observing Evan's ability to withstand psychic stress became part of the curriculum. Teachers asked questions they had never dared before, exploring how human endurance could complement Felisari power. Some were skeptical, some envious, but all were forced to acknowledge the truth. Humans were not as weak as they had long believed. Humans survived what others could not. Evan found himself thinking constantly about the locked room and the mysterious voice he had heard on his first night. It had warned him, guided him, and somehow tested him. Perhaps it had anticipated that humans could endure what Felisari could not. He did not know who or what had spoken to him, but he understood now that the voice was not a threat. It was a challenge, and humans had met it. One evening, Lysera spoke quietly while they sat together on the observation deck, overlooking the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. "Do you think the voice knew you would survive?" she asked. "I don't know," Evan admitted. "Maybe it did. Maybe it was testing me or preparing me for this. Humans endure, yes, but sometimes we survive because we are meant to help others." Lysera nodded slowly. "Then you were right. Humans endure differently, but that endurance, it can change everything." Evan looked out at the stars. "It already has. I've learned that being human is not about being the strongest. It's about refusing to leave when leaving is easier. It's about facing danger, protecting others, and surviving long enough to make a difference." As the artificial night deepened, the academy remained quiet, yet alive with potential. Students slept, machines hummed softly, and distant stars shone like silent witnesses to human persistence. Evan understood that the real test was not just Lysera's control or even his own endurance, but the future that both of them would face together. Psychic forces, ancient rooms, unknown entities, all waited. But Evan felt ready. Humans endured, yes. And sometimes that was all it took to face the impossible. The next morning, the academy called a meeting. The headmistress stood before the council of elders, Felisari leaders, and senior instructors. She spoke with calm authority. "Human resilience has proven itself," she said. "Evan Hale has demonstrated endurance that surpasses expectation. He has guided Lysera safely through powers that could have destroyed us all. We must recognize this. Humans are not mere observers. They are participants. Their strength lies not in physicality or speed, but in the endurance of mind and spirit." Evan listened quietly, humility pressing against him. Recognition was not something he sought, but it was inevitable. The academy would not forget what had happened. Humans had changed their perception of him and of humanity as a whole. That fact carried weight, responsibility, and expectation. Lysera approached him afterward, her eyes bright with determination. "Tomorrow, we attempt the final exercise," she said. "The one with the full psychic wave. I cannot do it alone. Will you be there?" Evan nodded. "I will be there. We endure together." That night, as he prepared for the exercise, Evan felt a strange calm settle over him. Humans had survived wars, natural disasters, and impossible odds. This was no different. He had endured the first surge, guided Lysera through recovery, and faced countless small dangers. The final test would be larger, more intense, but he was ready. Human endurance was not about avoiding danger. It was about standing firm in the face of it. As dawn broke over the gas giant, the academy stirred. Sensors hummed, students whispered, and somewhere deep within the old corridors, the locked room waited. Lysera and Evan stepped into the training chamber together, ready for the challenge. They did not speak. Words were unnecessary. Humans endured. Felisari power surged. And for the first time, it felt like the future of the academy, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on the quiet strength of a human who refused to leave when leaving was easier. And in that silence, Evan realized something profound. Endurance was not just survival. It was the choice to act, the courage to face the unknown, and the willingness to protect others even when the outcome was uncertain. That was human. That was enough. That was everything. The morning light stretched across the academy like a promise. Evan Hale and Lysera stood in the center of the training chamber, ready for the final exercise. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of sensors and the occasional creak of metal as the station adjusted to the gas giant's rotation below. Students and instructors had gathered at the observation decks, their faces full of anticipation, curiosity, and in some cases apprehension. Lysera's eyes were focused. The psychic energy inside her, once wild and chaotic, now moved like a river controlled by careful hands. But the surge they were about to attempt was unlike anything she had tried before. The chamber had been designed for containment, not training, and the energy she could summon now was approaching the limits of what the academy's walls could withstand. Evan, standing beside her, felt the same hum he had felt countless times before, but this time it was stronger. It was not just her energy, it was the culmination of every test, every struggle, every surge they had faced together. "Remember," Evan said quietly, "humans endure. Not because we are the strongest, not because we are the fastest, but because we refuse to walk away. Focus, Lysera. I'll be with you every step." She nodded. The flicker in her eyes told him she trusted him completely. That trust was rare among Felisari, even rarer among humans, but here it was. Together they could face the impossible. Lysera began the exercise. She inhaled slowly, drawing the psychic energy within her to the surface. The first wave rippled outward. The walls of the chamber vibrated, sensors flashed, and a low hum filled the room. Evan felt the familiar pressure in his mind, a weight that would have crushed anyone else. But he stood firm, absorbing, guiding, and channeling the energy. His human endurance acted as a buffer, a stabilizing force that allowed Lysera to control the surge rather than be consumed by it. The second wave hit stronger. The floor beneath them shook slightly, and a faint glow traced the edges of the chamber walls. Lysera faltered for a moment, and the energy threatened to spiral out of control. Evan instinctively leaned forward, extending his presence, letting her feel that she was not alone. His mind reached out without words, steadying hers. "You can do this," he said. "Endure." Together, she inhaled again, pulling the energy back under her control. Slowly, deliberately, she let it flow, shaping it into a controlled pulse. The light in the chamber dimmed as the surge subsided. Evan felt the weight in his mind ease slightly. They had survived the first phase. The observers in the gallery exchanged murmurs. Whispers of admiration, disbelief, and hope floated through the air. Humans had already proven themselves capable of enduring what no other species could, but this was different. This was mastery. The next surge was stronger, more intense. Lysera's abilities had grown in ways even the headmistress had not predicted. Evan braced himself. His body was steady, his mind focused. The energy rushed toward them, a wave of light and thought, pulsing with raw power. For a moment it felt as though the entire chamber would shatter. Sensors screamed, lights flickered, and the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Evan did not move. He did not panic. He let the energy flow through him, absorbing and redirecting it, guiding Lysera with a calm presence. Humans endured, yes, but they also acted, and that combination made the impossible possible. Lysera's hands glowed with controlled energy as she learned to push back the surge without letting it overwhelm her. The third wave was the strongest yet. It came not just from Lysera, but from the chamber itself. The locked room, the one that had whispered warnings to Evan on his first night, seemed to resonate with her power. It pulsed, almost alive, reacting to her strength. Evan felt the pull in his mind, a sensation that tugged at the edges of consciousness, demanding retreat. Any other human would have faltered, Any other Felisari would have collapsed, but Evan endured. He reached out with his presence, steadying her. "You are not alone," he said. "I am here. Endure." Lysera focused with renewed determination. Her body glowed faintly, the energy shaping into perfect arcs and pulses, controlled and precise. The chamber responded, stabilizing as if acknowledging their cooperation. Evan felt a surge of pride. This was human endurance at its finest, not raw strength but persistence, focus, and an unshakable will. Slowly the energy subsided. The chamber lights returned to normal. The walls vibrated faintly but held steady. Lysera sank to her knees, exhausted but unharmed. Evan stood beside her, breathing steadily, feeling the residual hum of her energy fade. The observers erupted into applause. Not loud, chaotic applause, but respectful acknowledgement of something extraordinary. Humans had endured, guided a Felisari through impossible power, and proven that resilience could shape outcomes that even the most powerful species could not achieve alone. Lysera looked up at Evan, her eyes shining with gratitude and awe. "I could not have done this without you," she said. You helped me control what no one else could even survive." Evan smiled. "You endured, I just helped steady the path." The headmistress entered the chamber then, her eyes gleaming. She approached slowly, her fur reflecting the soft light. "You have done more than survive," she said, her voice calm but full of respect. "You have shown what humans are capable of. You have guided Lysera safely through her greatest challenge. That is a gift few species could offer, and even fewer would survive to demonstrate." Evan inclined his head. "Humans endure," he said simply. "It is what we do." The headmistress studied him for a long moment. "Endurance is more than survival," she said. "It is the strength to act, to guide, and to protect when all else seems impossible. You have proven that. The Academy and the galaxy will not forget it." Lysera stood beside Evan, now fully composed and in control. She took a deep breath and looked out at the observers. "I will continue to train," she said, "but I will not forget what you taught me. Humans endure differently, yes, but that endurance, it can change everything." Evan nodded. "It already has." The days that followed were filled with quiet acknowledgement. The Academy adjusted its curriculum to incorporate human endurance as a study. Observers and instructors took notes. Students whispered about Evan's ability to withstand what would have destroyed others. Felisari, who had once dismissed humans, now regarded them with newfound respect. Humans were rare here, yes, but their endurance had proven itself invaluable. Evan and Lysera continued training together. Each exercise was more challenging than the last, but with each one she grew stronger, more confident, and more capable. Evan's presence remained a stabilizing force, not because he was the strongest, but because he endured calmly and persistently. One evening, as the Academy quieted for the night, Evan returned to the observation deck alone. He looked out at the swirling clouds of the gas giant below and reflected on what had happened. Humans had always endured, sometimes quietly, sometimes in situations that others would have fled. Here, in an alien academy filled with power, discipline, and history, human endurance had made a tangible difference. It had saved a life, stabilized a dangerous power, and changed perceptions. The soft hum of psychic energy filled the air. Lysera had left for her quarters, confident and in control. Evan allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Endurance was not about recognition. It was about persistence, action, and the courage to face what others could not. That was human. That was enough. That was everything. The next day, the headmistress summoned both of them to the council chamber. Representatives of multiple species waited, watching with curiosity and respect. Maelrix spoke first. "We have observed something remarkable," she said. "A human has endured what no other species could. A Felisari has learned to control powers that once threatened destruction. Together, you have demonstrated that survival, endurance, and guidance can shape the future in ways we did not anticipate." Evan and Lysera exchanged a glance. Words were unnecessary. They had faced the impossible, and they had done it together. The council nodded, acknowledging the significance. They would remember this day. They would remember the lesson that humans endure, not because of power, not because of speed, but because of persistence, courage, and the quiet strength to act when it is needed most. Later, Evan returned to the observation deck, Lysera beside him. The stars stretched endlessly, distant and silent witnesses to human endurance. "We did it," she said softly. "No," Evan replied. "You did it. I just endured with you," she smiled. "Humans endure differently, yes. But now I think I understand. Endurance is more than surviving. It is guiding, protecting, and refusing to leave when leaving is easier." Evan nodded. "Exactly. That is what humans do. That is what makes us capable." The Academy continued its work, but a quiet shift had occurred. Humans were no longer seen as weak observers. They were participants, capable of enduring what others could not, capable of shaping outcomes with quiet persistence and steady courage. The galaxy might be vast, powerful, and ancient, but human endurance had left its mark. As night fell once more, Evan looked out at the stars, calm and steady. Humans had endured impossible challenges before, and they would endure many more. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. But now the galaxy knew. Humans could survive, humans could guide, and humans could change the course of events simply by enduring when no one else could. Evan smiled faintly, a quiet acknowledgement of truth. The journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: humans endure. And that endurance was enough to shape the future.